20 banned weapons it's a crime to keep in your home. This post is a slightly more detailed post I've done before. In part 1, I list 20 banned weapons it's a crime to keep in your home and which you can go to prison for in England and Wales, and why the government brought this law into force. In part 2, I explain what would and would not amount to a lawful defence to keep these banned weapons in the privacy of your home, and I also explore the various negative and positive criticisms of this law. Please feel free to express your views in the comments, as I'm very keen to know what you think about this law. Part 1. It is now a crime to keep in your home in England and Wales without a lawful defence. Mentioned later in part 2 the following weapons, and I apologise in advance for my pronunciation. A knuckle duster. That is a band of metal or other hard material worn on one or more fingers and designed to cause injury, and any weapon incorporating a knuckle duster. B, a sword stick. That is a hollow walking stick or cane containing a blade which may be used as a sword. C, the weapon sometimes known as a hand claw, being a band of metal or other hard material from which a number of sharp spikes protrude and worn around the hand. D, the weapon sometimes known as a belt buckle knife, being a buckle which incorporates or conceals a knife. E, the weapon sometimes known as a push dagger, being a knife the handle of which fits within a clenched fist and the blade of which protrudes from between two fingers. F, the weapon sometimes known as a hollow kubotan, being a cylindrical container containing a number of sharp spikes. G, the weapon sometimes known as a foot claw, being a bar of metal or other hard material from which a number of sharp spikes protrude and worn strapped to the foot. H, the weapon sometimes known as a shuriken or shaken or Death Star, being a hard, non-flexible plate having 3 or more sharp radiating points and designed to be thrown. I, the weapon sometimes known as a balisong or a butterfly knife, being a blade enclosed by its handle, which is designed to split down the middle without the operation of a spring or other mechanical means to reveal the blade. J, the weapon sometimes known as a telescopic truncheon, being a truncheon which extends automatically by hand pressure applied to a button, spring or other device in or attached to its handle. K, the weapon sometimes known as a blowpipe or a blowgun, being a hollow tube out of which hard pellets or darts are shot by the use of breath. L, the weapon sometimes known as a kurasami, being a length of rope, cord, wire or chain fastened at one end to a sickle. M, the weapon sometimes known as a kyotse shogi, being a length of rope, cord, wire or chain fastened at one end to a hooked knife. N, the weapon sometimes known as a maretsugari or kusari, being a length of rope, cord, wire or chain fastened at each end to a hard weight or hand grip. O, a disguised knife. That is, any knife which has a concealed blade or concealed sharp point and is designed to appear to be an everyday object of a kind commonly carried on the person or in a handbag, briefcase or other hand luggage, such as a comb, brush, writing instrument, cigarette lighter, key, lipstick or telephone. P, a stealth knife. That is a knife or spike which has a blade or sharp point made from a material that is not readily detectable by apparatus used for detecting metal, and which is not designed for domestic use or for use in the processing, preparation or consumption of food or as a toy. Q, a straight side handled or friction locked truncheon, sometimes known as a baton. R, a sword with a curved blade of 50 centimeters or over in length. And for the purposes of this sub-paragraph, the length of the blade shall be the straight line distance from the top of the handle to the tip of the blade. S, the weapon sometimes known as a zombie knife, zombie killer knife or zombie slayer knife, being a blade with Roman numeral 1, a cutting edge Roman numeral 2, a serrated edge and Roman numeral 3, images or words whether on the blade or handle that suggest that it is to be used for the purpose of violence. And T, The weapon, sometimes known as a cyclo knife or spiral knife, being a weapon with Roman numeral 1, a handle, Roman numeral 2, a blade with 2 or more cutting edges, each of which forms a helix, and Roman numeral 3, a sharp point at the end of the blade. This law banning particular weapons in your home came about with the Offensive Weapons Act 2019, which came into force in England and Wales in July 2021. The reasons for banning these weapons in your home, as explained in the government guidance, as follows. Prior to the changes made by the Act, where the police find a zombie knife, a flick knife, or a butterfly knife, for example, in someone's home, they can only take action and remove the knife in question if it is considered to be evidence in criminal investigation. The Offensive Weapons Act 2019 will allow the police to remove such weapons held in private. So in essence, the idea of the senior police officers who were, I suspect, pushing for this law was to give more police powers to seize these weapons from a home and to prosecute people for simple possession of the banned weapon and the resulting forfeiture of the weapon at court so it could be taken out of the hands of a suspected violent criminal. So what does and does not amount to a lawful defence? And what are the positive and negative criticisms of this law? Part 2 is concerned about what is and is not a lawful defence for you to keep a banned weapon at home, and some of the criticisms levelled at this law. The specific law which banned weapons in your home is contained in section 4621AA of the Offensive Weapons Act 2019 and states, any person who possesses a weapon to which this section applies in private is guilty of an offence and liable on summary conviction in England and Wales to imprisonment to a term not exceeding 51 weeks, to a fine, or to both. In short, the Act also prohibits the possession in private of dangerous and offensive weapons, to which the restriction of the Offensive Weapons Act 1959 and the Criminal Justice Act 1988 apply as per the government guidance. So, what would and would not amount to a lawful defence to keep a banned weapon at home? Let me outline 2 unlawful defences. A. Saying you kept the banned weapon at home as a general precautionary measure or as a general non-imminent self-defence measure. And B. Saying you had a reasonable excuse or a good reason to keep the banned weapon at home. These again are not lawful defences unless they fall within the limited defences mentioned later. But there are specific lawful and very limited defences contained in the law, and to quote the statutory guidance, the defences that already exist under section 141 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988 also apply to their simple possession. This includes that the weapon in question is 1. Of historical importance. This particular defence is connected, as per the CPS, to functions carried out on behalf of the Crown or visiting forces possessing weapons of historical importance, that is, from the battlefield or given in a ceremony. 2. To be used for historical reenactments. 3. To be used for sporting activities, and this would be a regulated sport in the UK. 4. For the use in film and theatre. 5. Possessed on behalf of a museum or gallery, or lent or hired by a museum or gallery for cultural, artistic or educational purposes. 6. Possessed for religious reasons, and this is really limited to curved swords, pretty much a presentation by a Sikh to another person at a religious ceremony or other ceremonial event. The government guidance also says antique weapons over 100 years old are exempted from section 141 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988. This exemption now also applies to the offence of possessing such antique weapons. There is also an exemption for swords with curved blades of 50 centimetres or longer, made before 1954, or those made at any time by traditional method by hand. There is also a general defence of arguing a particular fact about the weapon, that it does not make it a banned weapon to keep at home. So for example, the police say the knife is a zombie knife, but you say it is not. an expert would be required to check whether the images or words on the knife suggest that it is or is not used for the purposes of violence. But what do you think about this law on banned weapons at home in England and Wales? Should an Englishman's home be his castle, so to speak? Should we be able to keep whatever we want to at home? That it's not the law's business to regulate what we do at home and what we keep at home? Should the actions of a criminal minority criminalise the actions of law-abiding citizens? Should people at home have a right to bear arms at home or on their private land to protect themselves from possible intruders? Have lawmakers been watching too many Bruce Lee kung fu movies, creating a moral panic and fear to ban in public some seemingly very obscure weapons back in the 1980s, which are now banned in private in the 2020s? And should keeping a banned weapon at home be a strict liability offence? That is, you can be prosecuted simply by having it in your home on the mantelpiece or something you brought on holiday where there is no intent to harm another. Or do you think this law is right, that suspected violent criminals who possess these types of weapons for their suspected criminal activity should not be allowed to keep them, even if there is no specific proof the weapon has been used in any crime, but they are suspected of being part of the armoury of a crime and a criminal by the police? And generally, do you think it is right that with the rise of violent crime on the street, some particular weapons described as dangerous need to be banned to keep so everyone is safe, even if they're kept in your home? Feel free to comment, follow, like and share.